I never thought I'd sit down and write all of this, yet here I am, hands trembling over the keyboard trying to piece together every fragment of memory. Maybe someone will read this and dismiss it as the ramblings of a sleep-deprived mind. Maybe others will feel the same crawling dread I lived through. Whatever the case, I need to tell it, if only to convince myself that what happened was real. It began so quietly, so harmlessly, that I didn't notice the thin cracks spreading through my ordinary life. The house I lived in was nothing special, an aging two-story building on the outskirts of the city, the kind of place you rent because it's cheap, not because you love it. The floorboards groaned, the wallpaper peeled in spots, and the heating system rattled like a dying animal every winter. Still, I'd convinced myself it had a kind of charm, or at least that's what I told myself to endure the loneliness. The first time I heard it, I thought it was just the house shifting, a faint, dragging sound at night as though someone moved heavy furniture across the upstairs floor. But I lived alone and the only furniture up there hadn't been touched in months. My landlord had stored a few old cabinets in the attic space, locked away, and I rarely bothered to climb those stairs. So I shrugged it off. Old houses make old noises, but the sound returned. Night after night. Not exactly the same, sometimes slower, sometimes faster, sometimes so faint I wasn't sure if I imagined it. Yet always there after midnight, when the rest of the world had gone still, I tried to ignore it. Put in earphones, blasted white noise, but the more I tried to block it out, the sharper it became, like it was cutting through every barrier, intent on being heard. Then came the whispers. I wish I could tell you what they said. Most nights it was too muffled. A chorus of voices bleeding together like wind slipping through cracks. Other nights it felt close. Too close, as though someone leaned over my bed and breathed half-formed words into my ear. I would jolt awake, drenched in sweat, heart pounding, and sit up to nothing but shadows stretching across the ceiling. At first, I blamed stress. Long work hours, too much caffeine, not enough sleep. I convinced myself my brain was inventing things, like it sometimes does when you're hovering between waking and dreaming. That explanation worked for a while, until I began noticing the objects. It started small. A mug I always kept in the sink appeared on the counter. A chair that belonged near the window sat turned toward the door. A stack of papers I'd left neatly on my desk ended up scattered across the floor. Little changes, just enough to make me second-guess myself. Did I move that? Did I forget? Was I losing track of my own actions? But then one morning, I came down to the kitchen and found the fridge door standing wide open. Every item had been removed, neatly placed in rows on the floor as if someone had been cataloging them. My hands shook as I returned each thing to its shelf, forcing myself not to cry. That was the first moment I said out loud into the silence, "Who's there?" Of course, no answer came. Only the hum of the broken refrigerator light flickering, buzzing like an insect's wings. I should have left the house then. Packed my things, broken my lease, and never looked back. But denial is a powerful drug. I told myself maybe I had sleepwalked, even though I never had in my life. I told myself maybe someone had broken in, though nothing was stolen. Any explanation was better than the one I feared. Weeks blurred. My reflection grew paler in the mirror, with purple bruises of exhaustion beneath my eyes. I began to dread the fall of night. I would pace the living room with every light switched on, waiting, listening. And always, like clockwork, the sounds would return. The dragging above, the whispers bleeding through the walls. But something changed. The noises grew bolder, louder, as though whatever lingered in that house had realized I was paying attention. One night the dragging sound stopped abruptly, directly above my bed. I held my breath. And then, I swear on everything I have left, the ceiling bowed just slightly, as though something massive leaned down with its full weight. I froze. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. For what felt like hours, I lay there, staring at that bulging ceiling, waiting for it to break and spill whatever waited on the other side. But it didn't. Instead, the pressure lifted and silence settled like a suffocating blanket. From that night on, I stopped sleeping in my bedroom. I dragged a blanket into the living room, curling up on the couch with the TV humming static to keep me company. But the house seemed to know. The sounds followed. That's when the dreams began, or at least I told myself they were dreams. I'd wake, paralyzed, unable to move or cry out, while the room swam in thick shadows. A figure would stand at the far corner, tall, wrong, bent at angles no human body should bend. I couldn't see its face, but I felt its gaze burrowing into me, burning through skin and bone. Sometimes it moved closer, inch by inch, until it loomed just over me. Then with a jolt I'd snap awake, gasping. The room empty again, but the terror lingered long after the dream ended. And soon, I wasn't sure anymore where the dreams ended and reality began. The more I tried to hold on to reason, the less it mattered. The house was unraveling me thread by thread, and I couldn't tell which pieces were mine anymore. At work, people noticed. A colleague leaned over one afternoon, her face tight with concern. "You okay? You look like you haven't slept in a week." I mumbled something about stress and deadlines, but her eyes lingered on me longer than comfort allowed. I could tell she didn't buy it. I didn't buy it either. By then, sleep had become an enemy. Each night I resisted it, but no matter how hard I fought, exhaustion eventually dragged me under. And every time I closed my eyes, the figure returned. I called it the Watcher. It always appeared the same way, in the corner of whatever room I occupied, as if it followed me into my dreams. Its limbs hung too long, arms brushing the floor, its neck craned at a grotesque angle, and yet I never saw its face. Just a mass of shifting dark, like smoke forced into the outline of something human. In one dream, it crouched beside me, whispering in a language I couldn't understand. The syllables slithered, crawling into my ears, setting my teeth on edge. When I jolted awake, the whisper didn't stop. It lingered, echoing through the walls, soft but unmistakable. I thought I was losing my mind. I tried researching sleep paralysis, shadow figures, even mold hallucinations from old houses. But nothing explained the changes, because now it wasn't only me noticing. One evening I invited my friend Daniel over. He was the kind of skeptic who laughed at ghost stories and debunked every horror movie we watched. I thought if anyone could cut through my growing paranoia, it would be him. We ordered pizza, cracked open a couple of beers, and for the first hour, I almost felt normal. Then sometime past midnight, Daniel froze mid-sentence, his eyes fixed on the darkened hallway behind me. "What?" I asked, my stomach dropping. He shook his head quickly. "Nothing. Thought I saw. Never mind." But his forced laugh told me everything. Later, when he was leaving, he leaned in close and whispered, "I don't know what's going on in this place, man, but it doesn't feel right. You should get out." Hearing it from him, someone who mocked anything supernatural, cemented my worst fear. It wasn't just me. After that, things escalated. Objects no longer just moved. They broke. I'd wake to shattered glass on the kitchen floor, cupboards yawning open like mouths, books ripped from shelves and scattered in violent arcs. Once I found deep gouges clawed across my bedroom door, as though something had tried to get out or in. I stopped sleeping entirely. I'd pace the house until dawn, surviving on coffee and adrenaline. My body felt like it was shutting down, but the thought of closing my eyes, of giving the Watcher another chance to draw closer, terrified me more than collapse. Then came the night I heard the footsteps. I was sitting on the couch, lights blazing, TV playing static because I couldn't bear silence. When I heard it, slow, deliberate steps descending the staircase. I froze, staring at the hallway, every hair on my body rising. The sound was real. Too real. Wood creaking under weight that wasn't mine. I grabbed the nearest thing I could, a fireplace poker, and crept to the bottom of the stairs. My mouth went dry. My heart pounded so loud I thought it would give me away. The steps stopped. I stood there, staring into the darkness above, waiting. Then, with agonizing slowness, a shape emerged at the top of the staircase. At first, it was just shadow. Then the outline solidified, tall, impossibly tall, its head nearly scraping the ceiling. Its limbs dangled, too long, too wrong, fingers curling like hooks. The Watcher. For the first time, it wasn't in a dream. I stumbled back, nearly dropping the poker. The figure remained at the top of the stairs, utterly still. Yet the weight of its gaze pressed into me like a physical force. I couldn't look away. My chest constricted, breath coming in shallow gasps, and then it moved. Not with the awkward slowness of a nightmare, but with a sudden jerking lurch, stepping down one stair, then another, each movement sharp and unnatural, like a puppet yanked by invisible strings. I bolted. I don't remember grabbing my keys. Don't remember wrenching the front door open. 1 second I was staring at that thing descending toward me. The next I was outside, barefoot on the cold pavement, gulping air like I'd surfaced from drowning. I spent the night in my car, parked 2 streets away, gripping the steering wheel until dawn. When the sun rose, the house looked harmless again, a tired building basking in pale light. But I knew better. Something lived there, something that didn't want me to leave. When I returned the next morning, it was only because I had nowhere else to go. My savings were thin, my family lived hours away, and the idea of explaining any of this to them felt impossible. So I stood outside that house, keys trembling in my hand, convincing myself daylight made everything safer. It didn't. Inside, the air was thick, heavier somehow, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. I half expected to find overturned furniture, broken glass, or some sign of the figure I'd seen on the stairs. But everything was neat, too neat, as though someone had tidied up after a storm. For a fleeting second, I wondered if I'd hallucinated the entire thing. But when I reached the living room, my stomach dropped. On the coffee table lay a single object, my blanket, the one I'd dragged to the couch for nights. Folded neatly, edges perfectly aligned, like a gift left for me. I hadn't done that. From that day, I knew the Watcher wasn't just haunting me, it was playing with me. I tried avoiding the house as much as possible, spent long hours at the library, stayed late at work, even lingered at coffee shops until they closed. But eventually, inevitably, I had to return, and each time the house seemed to welcome me back with new tricks. The whispers became clearer. I'd catch fragments now, my name, always my name, drawn out in tones that weren't quite male or female, but something in between, something that scraped at my nerves. One night, while brushing my teeth, I saw movement in the bathroom mirror, not behind me but inside the reflection. Like the glass held another world. A shadow crossed the space where I stood, though nothing moved in the room itself. I dropped the toothbrush, foam spilling down my chin, and backed away. But the shadow lingered, a smear of darkness hovering where my reflection should have been. I smashed that mirror with my fist. The shards scattered across the floor, glinting under the light. For a heartbeat, I thought I saw the pieces shift, arranging themselves into a crude smile. That night, I wrapped my bleeding hand in gauze and sat in the kitchen, shaking. I knew then I couldn't handle this alone. I called Daniel. At first, he thought I was joking. My voice was frantic, my words spilling too fast, but when he heard the crack in them, his tone changed. He came over the next day carrying a duffel bag like he was preparing for battle. "I don't know what the hell you've got yourself into," he said, "but if it's real, I want to see it." We spent the night together in the house. Every light on, coffee mugs lined up on the counter. I felt safer with him there, his presence grounding me, reminding me I wasn't entirely lost. Hours passed. Midnight came and went. For a while it seemed the house was mocking me, staying silent, offering nothing. Daniel began to relax, teasing me that maybe I'd just needed sleep. Then at 3:07 a.m., the upstairs floorboards groaned. We both froze. The sound was unmistakable. Dragging, heavy, deliberate. Daniel's face went pale. "You hear that, right?" Before I could answer, the whispers followed. Not muffled this time, but clear. My name, repeated over and over, voices overlapping until the air vibrated with them. Daniel swore under his breath. "Jesus Christ!" We stood, hearts pounding, staring at the staircase. The shadows at the top shifted, thickening, forming a shape. The Watcher. It towered in the darkness, its limbs grotesquely long, head cocked at that impossible angle. The temperature in the house plummeted, our breath clouding in the air. Daniel grabbed my arm. "We're leaving now." But the Watcher moved. Not down the stairs this time, across the ceiling. Its body crawled upside down, joints twisting with sickening pops, moving like a spider across the plaster. I screamed. Daniel yanked me toward the door. We didn't look back as we ran. Didn't stop until we were outside, gulping the cold night air. We drove to his place and locked every door and window. Neither of us slept. We just sat in silence, waiting for dawn. The next morning, Daniel told me he believed me now. He also told me he wanted nothing more to do with the house. "Whatever that thing is," he said, voice shaking, "it's not just haunting you. It's attached to you, and I won't let it follow me home." He dropped me off near my street but refused to come closer. I couldn't blame him. When I returned to the house alone, I found the front door already unlocked. Inside, on the living room wall, scratched deep into the plaster, was one word, "Stay," I should have left for good. Any sane person would have. But something about that single word carved into the wall rooted me to the spot. Stay. It wasn't a warning. It was a command, and the worst part? Some part of me wanted to obey. Days blurred into one another. I went through the motions of life, showering, eating, showing up at work. But it all felt detached, like I was watching myself from a distance. At night, the watcher grew bolder. I'd see its silhouette at the end of the hallway, standing perfectly still. Sometimes it would vanish the moment I blinked. Other times it would remain there until dawn, unyielding, watching. The line between waking and dreaming collapsed. I'd catch myself dozing off at my desk and jolt awake, only to see the watcher reflected in my computer screen. I'd walk home and feel its shadow stretching beside mine on the pavement. It was everywhere, bleeding into every corner of my life. I stopped talking to people. What could I say? That I was being stalked by something no one else could name? That its whispers had started to make sense? Syllables forming words that clawed their way into my thoughts? Belong. Forever. Mine. Those words repeated endlessly until I wasn't sure if they came from the watcher or from inside me. One night I decided to end it. I poured gasoline through the house, struck a match, and watched the flames lick up the walls. My eyes stung with smoke, but I felt a rush of relief. This was it, the only way to break free. But the fire died. It didn't sputter or spread. It simply extinguished itself as though swallowed whole. The match dropped to the floor, blackened, lifeless. The watcher was stronger than fire. I collapsed onto my knees, sobbing. My last hope was gone. That's when the knocking started. 3 sharp raps on the front door. Then again. And again. Each strike rattled the frame until dust fell from the ceiling. I stumbled back, heart slamming against my ribs. The door burst open, not from wind, not from force. It simply swung wide, revealing nothing but the night beyond. Yet I knew, something had been let in. The whispers swelled louder than ever, surrounding me, pressing against my skull until I screamed for them to stop. Shadows writhed along the walls, converging, shaping themselves into that familiar figure. The watcher loomed taller than ever, its body bending and stretching until it filled the entire room. I backed into a corner, trembling, clutching my useless matchbox like a weapon. "What do you want from me?" I cried, and for the first time it answered, not with sound, but with clarity that pierced my mind like a blade. "You." I don't remember what happened next in any logical order. My body lifted from the ground, pinned by an unseen force. My vision blurred at the edges, colors smearing into darkness, yet I could still see it. The watcher towering, swallowing the space around me. Its face, once a void of shifting shadow, began to take form. Not human, not even close, something like bone stretched too thin, sockets too deep, mouth split wider than nature allowed. The pressure against my chest grew unbearable. My ribs felt as if they might crack, lungs squeezed dry. The whispers weren't whispers anymore. They were roars, crashing in my skull like an ocean of voices all chanting the same word. Mine. I clawed at the air, desperate, choking, every instinct in me screaming to fight. But my limbs weren't my own. They jerked and spasmed as though strings pulled them from above. My body twisted in angles it couldn't endure, pain tearing through joints and muscles, and then stillness. The force released me. I collapsed to the floor, gasping, my throat raw, every nerve burning. For a moment I thought I'd been spared, that maybe it had decided to let me live. Broken but breathing, but when I raised my head I saw it kneeling before me, face inches from mine. That impossible grin split its features, and though no sound came from its mouth, the word vibrated through me, rattling my bones. Stay. The world fractured. Shadows swallowed light. The walls warped. The ceiling stretched higher until the house itself felt like it was folding in on me. My mind splintered under the weight of it. The next thing I knew, it was morning. I was lying on the couch, sunlight streaming weakly through the curtains. My body ached as though I'd been beaten, bruises blooming across my arms and chest. My hand throbbed where I'd punched the mirror, but the gauze was gone. In its place was a crude bandage, layers of old cloth I didn't own wrapped with unnatural precision. I wasn't alone when I woke. In the chair opposite me, by the window, sat the watcher. Smaller now, human-sized, its shape more solid but no less wrong. It didn't move, didn't breathe. It only sat there, head tilted, watching me with hollow sockets that burned with something I can't describe. And in that silence, something in me broke. I didn't scream. I didn't run. I simply lay there staring back at it, numb. A strange calm washed over me like resignation. Because deep down I understood the truth, it wasn't going to leave, and neither was I.